Hello, thanks for joining me in this new video. We will continue building our portfolio website, and today the main focus will be on the work experience section, where we will use metabox to create custom fields, custom post types, relationships, clonable groups that we will later query in bricks using the query loop. If you missed the first video, you will find the link in the description, so it may be a good idea to watch it first. And now let's jump into action. The next one is our work experience section. So let's duplicate this one to save us just a few time. Rename it work experience. I will keep my container, my heading, but we'll delete what's inside. And let's change our content to work experience. So in this section, we want to create cards with a kind of horizontal slider, but we will not use any slider library for that. And the first thing we need is to create our custom post types. So let's go to our dashboard and I will go to metabox, post types. So let's create a new post type that will be our work experiences, work experience with a K. I won't change anything to the labels, the defaults are okay. Let's choose maybe this briefcase for our work experiences. That's all we need to change in this tab. I want a title. I don't need the editor. I want the thumbnail. It will be used for the company logo. And something important, I want to activate the page attributes. And this is necessary for our relationships to work properly. Let's publish it. And here are my work experiences. Then I want a new one that will be our skills. Let's pick, why not, this university hat for our skills. And same thing, I don't need the editor. And I want the page attributes. Publish. Now we have two post types. Let's create a relationship. And this one will be the experience to skill relationship. And be sure not to check this checkbox, reciprocal relationship, unless you know what you are doing. This is used when you want to link two items of the same type. And this is not what we want to do now. So I want to link from my first post type. That's, for example, my work experience. As an empty message, we can say no connected skill. And I want to link to a post, which is a skill, and no connected work experience. For the metabox, just to make things easy for us, we can add a title and we can say related skills, and on this one, related work experiences. And we don't need to take care of the field tab. Publish. And let's give it a try. So for now I have no skills. Let's add a new one. For now it's empty. As you can see, as I deactivated the editor, I don't have the WordPress editor, so I have just the title, and then I will add my custom fields. And on the side, we have our relationship. We are in a skill, and then we can select the related work experiences. So let's create a few one, JavaScript, publish, add a new one, PHP, just so we can have a list to work with. Why not WooCommerce, Oxygen, and that will be enough. We have a good list to work with. These are all our skills. And then for our work experiences, so let's imagine that I have a work experience at Google and that I used Node.js, PHP, and Vue.js. Let's publish. So now this work experience is related to those three skills. And if this works well, if I go and have a look at PHP, for example, I should find this work experience with the custom post. So PHP, and under PHP, I can see that it's related to my work experience at Google. So our relationship works. So now let's take care of our custom fields. And let's start with the simple one. It will be the skills. So first, before I forget, let's assign it to our skill custom post type. And then let's add a text. And our text will be our proficiency. Let's publish. And this should be the only one we need, because in our skills, as we did activate the post thumbnail, the featured image, we have the featured image to insert the logo. So now for Oxygen, I can fill a proficiency of 95%, for example. Perfect. Let's create the fields for the work experience. Assign it to the work experience. And we need a text field that will be the company. Another one that will be the job title. We want a date. This will be the start date. We want to insert a switch, and we will use the switch still there. So we will use it to determine if we are still in this position. And then we will add a new date. This one will be the end date. And we will go to the advanced tab, because this one will be conditional. We want an end date if we are not still there. So it's visible when the switch is equal to 0, which means that we are not there anymore. And by the way, let's change the default on off to yes and no. And now we will add a last one, because we want to create a bullet list. And to create this bullet list, we need items. And this will be a group that will be experience items. And it is clonable. And as a subfield, we have a text with a label of experience item. Okay, so let's publish, and let's go to my work experience, add a new one, or maybe let's go back to the one at Google. So let's add a logo. The company is Google, front end engineer, why not? Started on October 2020. I'm still there. So you see that if I'm still there, there's no end date. And for the items, I will just input some lorem ipsum. Let's have 3 of them. So you just have to click add more. And as this is a clonable field, you can create as many items as you want, and you will see later that we will query them from bricks. Okay, so you get the idea. Let me create a few more work experience, populate the field, so we have material to work with later. I'll see you when I'm finished. Well, now I have a few experiences that we can work with. I also have a large selection of skills. So let's continue and build our work experience section. So what we want to achieve here, if I come back to my reference design, we want this container. We will have cards for each work experience, and we want a scrollable container. It's full width when our site is contained within the size of our containers. We want this one to be full viewport width. We want it to be scrollable with a custom scroll bar. And of course, we still want this snap effect. So we want each card to snap into center. So let's see how we will build such a layout. I'm in my work experience section, in my container here. Let's reduce these ones. And I will add a div. So my div is right in the center of my container. And I want to define its dimensions. So let's give it a width of viewport width 100. It will be full viewport width. I want it to be 75 viewport height. Okay, so it takes the available space just below our heading. But now what happens? Let's give it just for a few moments a background color so you can have a look. I want it to extend on both sides. Maybe it's more visible in the preview mode, but for now it's contained in the parent container. But what I want, of course, is my div to extend to the side of my viewport. So we need a few tricks to center it, to position it properly. And so we will position it absolutely. And to position it absolutely, as you know, first, let's make sure that our container is positioned relative. That's the case because we also have a heading positioned absolutely. So back to my div. While we are here, let's give it a name. It will be our experience cards scrollable container. We will position it absolutely. Now you can see that it is limited to our container width. Of course, that's not what we want. And this is because Bricks by default applies a maximum width of 100%. So I want to override this Bricks default, or I want to cancel it. And to cancel it, we have a keyword. We have actually several keywords, but we will use one of them that's available at the bottom of our context menu. And I want to unset Bricks default. And you've seen with the live preview that by selecting unset, I unset the inherited value, the predefined value. And now my container extends outside of its parent container and is 100 viewport width. Okay, so let's remove this background. And now let's take care of the other thing. We need to style our scrollable container. So if you remember from what we did for the app container, we need to set an overflow. So this time we need an overflow of X because it will be on the horizontal direction. So I type X dash, start typing scroll. And this way I get the class o-overflow-x-scroll that will make our container scrollable. And you remember also that by default, at least on my system, on the Mac, when not in use, the scroll bars are not visible. So we need CSS to make them visible. So we need to first call the scroll bar class. I want it to be my brand color. So o-scrollbar-brand. And it's not yet well visible, but my scroll bar is now visible. Of course, I cannot see the brand color because there is no content. And then I want to define the snap behavior. So I'm at the container level. So at the container level, I want to state that snap in the inline direction is mandatory. I want my children elements to snap. Okay, so now we have the basic structure for our container. We can start working on the children elements. So I will first create one by inserting a div. This will be my experience card. And for now, this will be a bit strange because it's on top, it's full width. So let's first give it general styles. I want it to be a card 2. And I will create a custom class for my experience card. And in my custom class, I will define a width of content 1, this one. So now this, of course, reduces the width. I also want to define a maximum width. This is for making it responsive, because when I reduce the viewport width, going to mobile screen, for example, content 1 will be bigger than my viewport. So on viewport smaller than content 1, I want a maximum width of 90 viewport width. I don't have 90, so let's state 90 viewport width. Okay, one of the specificities of the content sizes, all those ones, the reading presets or the reading custom, is that the unit used to define these dimensions is CH. CH stands for character height. So this dimension is directly linked to the size of the font used for this container. So let's start adding some content. And first, in our card, we want a first group. Let's have a look. A first group where we will have an image, the title, and the company. So let's create a div, and this will be my header. We can give it a tag of header, and in your HTML document, it's perfectly correct to have more than one header. In this case, our card, and by the way, let's go to the card element and give it a tag of article. Our card is an article. That's an independent element. It can live on its, yes, it can live on its own. So it's an article, and our article has a header. And inside the header, let's add an image and 2 elements of text. And now this content will be pulled through the query loop from our metabox custom fields. So let's come to our experience card and make it using the query loop. And now we will define the query. We want to query a post. The post type will be a work experience. And that's it. But you can see that Bricks did pull all of our elements. Of course, it's not in the correct direction, but we will take care of that. So first, back to our header. Our header will be a flex row. Okay, so now we have the image on the left and we have our text element on the right, but they are side by side. I want them to stack on top of each other. So I will wrap the first one in a div and bring the second one inside the same div. And this div will be a flex column. Okay, so now let's take care of the dynamic data. This is my image, and I want to pull my image from dynamic data. And this will be my featured image. And I want it to be a thumbnail size. My first text, let's get rid of this, will be, and now let's go to our custom fields, work experiences. We have our field. This will be the job title. And the second one will be at some time when building significant project, you have a lot of custom fields. So the search field is handy for that. And I can search for my company from my work experiences. And this will be the company. Okay, so now it starts looking what we want it to look like. Of course, it needs a bit of styling. So my job title will be a font size fluid of 2. My company will be the font size fluid 1. And for the company logo, let's create a custom class that will be C company avatar. And I want to give it a maximum width of 8 vmin. So you remember this unit from our previous sections. It's the minimum between the viewport width and the viewport height. And I want it to be a circle. So let's go to our border and give it a radius, link them all together of radius round. Okay, so it's a bit strange the way bricks output things, but you need to work with confidence. And let's save. Now I want some spacing between my company logo and the text. So let's go to our header and add a gap of 4. And before we go further, let's fix this layout. And back to our scrollable container, we want to stack things horizontally. And there are several ways to do this. We could use flexbox, but I want to use grid. And you certainly know that when you use grid, the natural way for a grid to fill the available space, if I have a grid 3, for example, it will start by placing the elements on a row, the first 3 ones, and the 4th one will be on the following row. So the natural way to fill the grid is to fill the row first. And maybe it's a bit tricky, but actually what I want to create for my scrollable container is not a row with all the cards in a row, but I want to create a grid of several columns, each one having 1 row. So for now, we can consider that we have a grid of 1 column, and then the algorithm creates rows. What I want is having a grid of 1 row, and the algorithm creates columns. And to achieve this, I need to change the natural way, the natural flow of the CSS grid. We'll use a CSS property that is the grid autoflow, and we have a class in the framework. So if I start typing flow-column, we can see 2 suggested classes at the bottom of the list, which are grid flow column and grid flow column dense. And as soon as I select the first one, you can see that my grid is flowing along the horizontal axis. So let's select it. I will add a gap of 6. While we are there, I will also add a padding of 6. And now obviously something's wrong with our card's width. So let's fix that. And this is because, as I told you, the content dimension is based on the font size. And of course, I didn't pick the correct one. We need a content 3 for our card, which is much better. So now we have our cards, we have our container, it's flowing in the expected direction. So let's have a look at the front end. So this is our section with our card, and we have our container flowing horizontally. Our custom scroll bar, the correct color, everything's correct, except that for now we don't have the snapping effect. So let's add it back to our container. We have defined the snap inline mandatory, but that's at the container level. That's not enough. If you remember, we need also to define the children behavior, and this happens at the child level. So let's select our card and give it a class of snap-center. And now if I check my front end, my card snap in the center. Perfect. So let's continue just below this information. And by the way, I want to give this one a font weight of 700. We want to insert the skills we did practice, we developed during this work experience. And this will be pulled through the metabox relationship. So first I need to add a div to my card. And this div will be my skills container. I want it to be a flex row. And we will take care of the spacing later. And inside this skill container, I want to insert another div. And this one will use the query loop. And let's define the query. The type this time is not posts, it's a relationship. And this is our relationship, experience to skill. And that's the only thing we need to define now. Within this div, let's call it our skill, I will add an image. And this image will be pulled from dynamic data. And because of the relationship, I have access now to my skills. Okay, so this is the custom field we did create, the proficiency. That's not the one I want to display. What I want to display is the featured image. Let's pick the small thumbnail. And you can see that it did pull the associated skills through the relationship. So let's style this image. This will be a custom class of c-skill for work experience, for example. Okay, of course, I misspelled my class, but that's not trouble. I will give it a width of, let's try a size 3. And I want to give it a border radius. Even if some of my images are already rounded, I want to make sure that they are all rounded. So I want a radius round. Let's save, have a look. And now we have our skills pulled from each work experience. Okay, the company logo is a bit too big to my taste. We want this centered. We want some spacing between the skills. So let's do that. So my company avatar will be, let's try 6. My header will have along the cross axis the items centered. Let's make our card a flex column. Give it some gap. A gap of 4. And let's also give our skills container item center and a gap of 4. And something's still wrong with my image. That's because that's not a minimum width that I want to set, but that's a maximum width. Here we are. And so let's get back to 8. Perfect for this. So we have pulled the skills images through a relationship. Now we want to pull the work experience items through metabox clonable group. So in our experience card, let's create a new div. This will be the experience items. And inside this div, let's add a new one. And this one will be an experience item. And my experience item will use the query loop. And we will query, this time, not a post, not a relationship, but a metabox group, our experience items. Let's close it. And we will create a bullet list using, so my experience item will be a flex row. Inside the row, we will have an icon and a text. I want the items to be centered, of course, on the cross axis. I want some gap of 1. For the icon, let's pick this one. Give it a color of my accent color and the size of 2. And now let's pull the text content through our clonable group. And we want the experience item from the experience items. And you can see in the preview that the 3 items from the work experience are pulled. Let's add some vertical spacing. So let's make our experience items a flex column and add a gap. And that's perfect. Now the last thing I want to do on this card is add the start date and the end date, if there is one, for this work experience. And for this, we could try to use bricks conditions on the elements. But as I want to differentiate the way we display it, if we have an end date or if we are currently in the position, we will use a code element. So I know this can feel a little scary or unfriendly for some of you, but we will go step by step and create it together. So let's add a code element. And by the way, one last thing at my card level, the experience card, is that I want to use the whole height. So I want the available space at the bottom to be spread evenly between the elements. So I want a flex on the main axis of between. Okay, so now in our code element, let's delete what's here and let's zoom to the block and we will write a bit of PHP. So to write PHP, you need to open and close PHP. And this is done with the opening and the closing tag. What we want to do is echo something. Echo is the PHP function that will print, that will make something appear on your page. For example, if I write echo quote and we use single quotes, hello world, semicolon, and I execute code, you see that hello world is printed on my cards. Okay, quite simple. So now the trick will be to create the string that we want to output. And we will do this based on our custom fields. So let's replace this hello world by a variable. And we use the $sign. And this will be the string to output. And at the beginning, our string to output is equal to the empty string. So in the code we will write together, I will detail it, so there will be a lot of steps. Of course, the final code could be shorter than what we will create together, but that's not a problem. It will work perfectly like this. So first thing, I want to grab the values of my custom fields from the database. And the first one I want to grab is the switch value that lets me know if the person is still in the job or not. So I will create a variable that's name still there. And I made up this name. It can be anything that is equal to, and we will call a PHP function that's given by metabox, which is rwmb underscore get underscore value, and let's spell it correctly. And we will give this function one argument, which is the ID of the field we defined in metabox. So let's go back to our dashboard, metabox. We want to go to the custom fields, our work experience fields. still there, that's our switch, and this is the ID of the field. So let's copy this value and paste this value between the quotes. And this will retrieve the switch value from the database. To demonstrate this, let's echo this value. And now we can see that here we have a 0, which means that we are not in this position anymore. Here we have a 1, meaning we are in this position. 0. So back to our code. Obviously, that's not what we want to output, but we've just seen that it works and it grabs the value of the switch from the database. We still want to output the string, and now we will create the string. So let's pull all the values we need. I just duplicate the line to save a bit of time. The other one we want is our start date. We want our end date. And let's get the IDs for those fields. Our start date is this one. And our end date is this one. So now we have all the values we need. And we will start adding elements to the string we want to output. So to do this, we will grab the value string to output, and we will concatenate using dot equal, and this will add a new piece of string to the current string. And the first thing we will add is from, because we always have a start date, okay? And now we want to add the start date. But if we just add the value of start date, let's do it. And let's add our start date and have a look at the result. It's not a pretty format. That's the database format. And we want a pretty date with only the month and the year. So we will manipulate our date and we will create a new variable, date, and say that the date is equal to a function date underscore create, parentheses, and we will give it as an argument our start date. And then the string we add to the output is not our start date, but it will be a formatting of this date, and we will use another function, date underscore format, and it takes two arguments. The first one is the date we want to format, this one, and the second argument is the format. And I will use capital F, which is the PHP code for the full month, and capital Y, which is the PHP code for the full year. And if we now have a look at the output, you can see that it is from May 2018. Perfect. So we have the from with the date. And now we want to work on the to, and we will have two cases. If they are still in the job, we will output to present. If they are not, we will output to and the date. So to make a decision, we will use an if condition. Inside the parentheses, we will give the condition, and the condition is the value of our switch. So if $, still underscore there, and if the value is 1, the condition will be true. If the value is 0, the condition will be false. And now we use curly brackets. And so if the condition is true, we want to add to our string another string that states to present. And then we will use the keyword else, meaning if the condition is not true, and I will copy this piece of code inside of my else statement. And this time it's not the start date that we want, it's the end date. And we will convert it to the same format. Let's save. And our function is finished. And if everything goes well, it should output from the start date in all cases, and then when people still are in the job, output to present, otherwise output to and the end date. So let's have a look. So we are close, we have a bit of space missing. We will solve that. And when they are still present, from August 2021 to present. And here we have the two dates. So to solve this missing, we miss a two word in the middle with a dot to concatenate. So what we are doing here, we are adding the string to with two spaces on both sides, a dot to concatenate with the date we just formatted. And this time it should be correct, from October 2020 to August 2021. Last thing, I want to push this text to the right side of my card. So I will go to the Style tab, Typography, and make my text right aligned. Save, have a look at our front end. And now on the front end, we have our work experience section finished with all of our cards, with our snapping container and the information pulled from the custom post type and our custom fields, the custom post type featured image, the work experience, the company name. Then from the same custom post type, we have this group, this clonable group. And for now, I did create 3 items for each work experience, but the interest of this clonable group, of course, is that it can be different. And if I create a 4th one on this work experience and I update back to the front end, when I refresh, I get my 4 items. And here the 3 items. The skills used are pulled from another custom post type with a relationship. And then, of course, we created a bit of PHP code to output this string, pulling custom post field values from the database and manipulating the string according to basic conditions to output what we wanted to output. So now our work experience section is finished. So let's continue with our skills section. And to save a bit of time, I will duplicate the about section, grab the work experience in place, and this will be the skills section. And I want to get rid of this content. Let's delete it and change our heading to skills. So first, let's add a basic text. This text will be, these are the skills I can leverage for you. Hover any of them to reveal my current proficiency. I want a bigger typography, size of 3, and I want to limit the width to a maximum width of content 2. Now let's create a grid for our skills. So I insert a div, select the div. My div will be a grid 5. On the medium breakpoint, it will be a grid 3, and I will give it a gap of 6. So this is the skills grid. Inside of it, I will add a new div that will be my skill container. We will use it for the query loop. So in the content, I will activate the query loop and I will query my post type of skills. And inside my skill container, I will add an image and I will pull this image through the post featured image. Perfect. So on my skill container, I want to make sure all the images are rounded. So I want a radius round. I want everything centered. I want to specify the aspect ratio in case one of my images is not a square. So I use the class O-square. And of course, you noticed that in spite of my radius round, My images are still squares because I need to set the overflow to hidden. And here we have round images. And now I want to add my proficiency and I want it to appear on hover as an overlay. So let's add a text to my container, a basic text. And this text content will be dynamic data from metabox and it will be my proficiency. Let's style it. I want to give it a color of BW that will be white in dark mode and black in light mode, a font size of 4, a font weight of 700. I want to give it a background, and I will use a surface 4 with a 90% opacity, but I want my surface 4 to be tinted with my brand hue, so I will use a surface 4 brand. Okay, it's not visible yet. So to make it visible, we will position it absolutely. So as you know, to position something absolutely, we need to give the parent element the class of relative. And then our basic text can be absolutely positioned. And it is now in the middle. Okay. But I want the background to cover the whole surface, so I will use an inset of 0. And now the last thing is that I want it, of course, to be centered, so I will use the class supercenter, and my text is centered. I want it to be invisible, so let's give it an opacity of 0. And now let's go to the hover state, and on hover, give it an opacity of 1. So they are back. And we want to animate the transition. So this happens in CSS transition. And we want to animate the opacity with a 0.3 seconds duration. And the timing function of var _o- is in out 3. Let's save. Back to the front end. Let's refresh. And we are on our skills section. And if I hover, we have this overlay with the proficiency that's revealed. So our work experience section and our skills section are now finished. Give a like to the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's continue in the next video.